The galaxy was burning. Stars that had once shone brightly in the endless void now flickered like dying embers, their light consumed by the fires of war. Entire planets lay in ruins, their surfaces scarred by the relentless bombardments of alien weapons. Humanity, once a small and insignificant species on the galactic stage, found itself caught in the crossfire of powers far greater than it could ever hope to challenge. For years, Earth's leaders had tried to stay out of the conflicts between advanced civilizations, hoping to avoid destruction. But now, there was no escape. Captain Ryan Carter stood silently on the bridge of the USS Vanguard, his eyes fixed on the tactical display before him. The screen showed a grim picture, dozens of red dots representing enemy ships swarming around the blue ones that marked humanity's dwindling fleet. Each red dot was a Zorvath vessel, part of an empire that had declared war on Earth with a single goal: total domination. Ryan clenched his fists as another blue dot blinked out of existence, signaling yet another human ship lost to the relentless assault. Around him, the crew worked frantically, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. Some muttered prayers under their breath while others simply stared at their consoles, willing them to show something, anything, that might turn the tide of this battle. But the numbers didn't lie. Humanity was losing. Badly. And if something didn't change soon, Earth itself would be next. Ryan turned to his communications officer, Lieutenant Harper. "Any word from command?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Harper shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing new, sir. Admiral Monroe is still trying to negotiate with the Kalari, but—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge understood what she meant. The Kylari were a reptilian race known for their cold logic and disdain for weaker species. Asking them for help was like begging a lion to spare a lamb, not impossible, but highly unlikely. Ryan sighed and rubbed his temples. He hated feeling powerless. As a soldier, he had always believed in taking action, in finding solutions even when the odds seemed insurmountable. But here he was, standing aboard what might very well be humanity's last line of defense, watching as everything fell apart. It wasn't just the loss of ships or territory that weighed heavily on him. It was the knowledge that every failure brought the Zorvath one step closer to wiping out the human race entirely. Far below, on the surface of Mars, Alex Rivera cursed under his breath as he tightened a bolt on a damaged cargo shuttle. His hands were smeared with grease and sweat dripped down his face despite the cool air inside the repair bay. Once upon a time, Alex had dreamed of being a pilot, soaring through the stars and exploring distant worlds. Instead, he spent his days fixing broken-down ships for miners and traders who couldn't afford better maintenance. Life hadn't exactly gone according to plan. "Hey, Rivera," a voice called from across the bay. It was Marcus, one of the other mechanics. "You almost done with that thing? We've got a shipment waiting." Yeah, Alex replied, waving a wrench dismissively. "Give me 5 minutes." He leaned back against the shuttle's hull and wiped his brow. 5 minutes. That's all the time he needed to finish the job, but it felt like 5 lifetimes. Lately, every day dragged on forever, filled with the same monotonous tasks and empty promises of a better tomorrow. Sometimes Alex wondered if he'd made a mistake coming to Mars in the first place. Back on Earth, things weren't great, but at least they weren't boring. As he worked, a low rumble echoed through the station. At first, Alex thought it was just another transport docking nearby, but then the lights flickered, and alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Cursing again, Alex dropped his tools and ran toward the nearest window. What he saw made his blood run cold. The sky above Mars was alive with streaks of fire as dozens of Zorvath fighters screamed past the station. Explosions erupted in the distance and debris rained down like meteors. Panic spread quickly among the workers, some running for cover while others scrambled to evacuate. Alex froze, his mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Zorvath had never attacked Mars before. Why now? Before he could process what was happening, the ground beneath his feet shook violently. The station's structural integrity alarms wailed louder than ever, warning of imminent collapse. Alex snapped out of his daze and sprinted toward the hangar bay. If he was going to survive, he needed to get off this rock, and fast. Back aboard the Vanguard, Ryan watched as another wave of Zorvath ships appeared on the horizon. They moved with precision, their formations perfect, their tactics ruthless. Every attempt to break through their lines had failed miserably. Even the most experienced captains were struggling to keep up with the enemy's overwhelming firepower. "We can't hold them off much longer," said Commander Lewis, Ryan's second-in-command. His voice was steady, but his expression betrayed his growing despair. "If we don't retreat soon, we'll lose the entire fleet." Ryan nodded slowly. Retreat wasn't an option he liked considering. Pulling back would mean abandoning countless civilians trapped on nearby colonies, but staying put would mean certain death. For everyone. He glanced at the clock on the wall. Time was running out. Just then a transmission came through from Admiral Monroe. Her face appeared on the main view screen, her usual calm demeanor replaced by raw determination. "Captain Carter," she said, her voice firm, "we may have found a way to turn this around." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, Admiral?" Monroe hesitated for a moment, then continued. "The Kaelari have agreed to meet with us. They're willing to share intelligence about the Zorvath, if we prove ourselves worthy of their trust." Ryan frowned. The Kaelari were notorious for their arrogance and unwillingness to cooperate with lesser species. Convincing them to side with humanity wouldn't be easy. Still, it was the best chance they had. "Understood," Ryan replied. "We'll do whatever it takes." As the transmission ended, Ryan turned to his crew. "Listen up, people. We've got a shot at turning this war around, but it's going to take everything we've got. Are you with me?" A chorus of affirmatives filled the bridge, each voice laced with determination. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. Maybe, just maybe, humanity still had a fighting chance. Meanwhile, Alex had reached the hangar bay, only to find chaos reigning supreme. Dozens of people were crowded around the few remaining shuttles, desperate to board before the station collapsed entirely. Guards shouted orders, trying to maintain order, but it was clear that panic had already taken hold. Alex spotted a shuttle halfway across the bay and started pushing his way through the crowd. He didn't care how many elbows he had to dodge or how many angry shouts followed him. He just needed to get on board. As he neared the craft, a hand grabbed his arm and yanked him backward. "Not so fast," said a woman's voice. Alex turned to see a tall, dark-haired pilot glaring at him. Her flight suit was torn, and there was a nasty gash above her left eyebrow, but her eyes burned with intensity. "This isn't a free-for-all, buddy. You want a seat? You earn it." Alex gritted his teeth. "Look, lady, I don't have time for this. Either let me on or I'll find another way." The woman smirked. "Good luck with that." She released his arm and climbed into the cockpit. Before Alex could protest further, the engines roared to life, and the shuttle lifted off the ground. Without thinking, Alex lunged forward and grabbed onto the landing gear, clinging for dear life as the craft shot out of the hangar and into the fiery skies above. As the station crumbled behind him, Alex realized two things. First, he was probably going to die. Second, if he somehow survived this, his life would never be the same again. Little did he know, he was absolutely right. The shuttle jolted violently as it broke free from the collapsing station, its engines screaming against the fiery chaos of Mars's atmosphere. Alex clung to the landing gear with every ounce of strength he had, his knuckles white and his muscles burning. Below him, the once bustling mining outpost was now a graveyard of twisted metal and flames. The Zorvath fighters continued their relentless assault, obliterating anything that moved. Every explosion sent shock waves rippling through the air, threatening to shake Alex loose. Inside the cockpit, the dark-haired pilot wrestled with the controls, her face taut with concentration. She glanced at the rearview monitor and saw Alex hanging on for dear life. For a moment, she considered leaving him behind. It wasn't her job to save reckless civilians, but something about his determination caught her attention. Most people would have let go by now, but not him. He was still fighting. "Damn fool," she muttered under her breath before banking the shuttle sharply to avoid a streak of plasma fire. The sudden maneuver nearly dislodged Alex, who shouted curses into the void. But instead of slowing down, the pilot pushed the engines harder, weaving through the battlefield like a hawk dodging hounds. Alex gritted his teeth and held on tighter. His mind raced with questions. Who was this woman? Where was she going? And why hadn't she just left him to die? None of those answers mattered right now. He needed to focus on surviving. One wrong move, one slip of his fingers, and he'd be plummeting toward certain death. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shuttle broke free of the worst of the combat zone and entered open space. The Zorvath ships were still visible in the distance, but they seemed less interested in pursuing a single escape craft. The pilot exhaled sharply and brought the shuttle to a relative stop, allowing Alex to scramble aboard. "You're insane. You know that?" she said as he collapsed onto the floor of the cargo bay. Her voice was sharp, but there was a hint of admiration beneath the irritation. Alex coughed and wiped sweat from his brow. "Yeah, well, so are you. You didn't have to come back for me." "I didn't," she shot back, crossing her arms. "You just happened to be in the way." Despite her words, she offered him a hand and pulled him to his feet. "Name's Olivia Brooks. Lieutenant, Alliance Navy. What's your story?" "Alex Rivera," he replied, brushing himself off. "Mechanic. Or at least I was until 5 minutes ago." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "A mechanic, huh? Guess that explains why you're still alive. Not many people can hang onto a shuttle during evasive maneuvers." Alex shrugged. "I'm full of surprises." Before either of them could say more, the shuttle's proximity alarms blared. Olivia rushed back to the cockpit and scanned the sensors. A massive Zorvath cruiser loomed ahead, its weapons glowing ominously. It hadn't fired yet, but it was only a matter of time. "Great," Olivia muttered, punching buttons furiously. "They must have tagged us during the escape. We need to find cover, and fast." Alex peered over her shoulder at the display. "There," he pointed to a nearby asteroid field. "We can lose them in there." Olivia hesitated. Flying into an asteroid field was risky, especially in a small craft like theirs, but staying out in the open meant getting vaporized. With a frustrated sigh, she turned the shuttle toward the rocks. "Hold on tight," she warned. "This is gonna get rough." Meanwhile, aboard the USS Vanguard, Captain Ryan Carter prepared for what might be humanity's last stand. The Kalari had agreed to meet with Admiral Monroe, but their terms were clear. Humanity needed to prove itself worthy of their trust. That meant taking on a mission no one else dared attempt, a daring strike against a heavily fortified Zorvath supply depot orbiting Jupiter. Ryan reviewed the mission briefing with Commander Lewis and the rest of his senior staff. The depot was critical to the Zorvath war effort, funneling resources to their fleets across the solar system. If they could destroy it, they might buy themselves some breathing room, and maybe even impress the Kalari enough to join the fight. "It's suicide," Lewis said bluntly, leaning over the holotable. "Their defenses are too strong. Even if we manage to sneak past their patrols, we'll never survive the counterattack." Ryan nodded grimly. "Maybe. But if we don't try, we're dead anyway. Besides, we won't be alone." He gestured to the corner of the room, where Alex and Olivia now stood. After narrowly escaping Mars, their shuttle had been picked up by a passing Alliance patrol and brought aboard the Vanguard. Though neither of them were soldiers, their resourcefulness had earned them a place in the planning session. "So here's the plan," Ryan continued, pointing to the holographic map. "We'll send 2 teams in cloaked shuttles. Team 1 will disable the outer defenses, while Team 2 infiltrates the depot and plants explosives. Once the charges are set, we pull out and detonate remotely." "And what happens when the Zorvath reinforcements arrive?" Lewis asked skeptically. "That's where you come in," Ryan replied. "You'll hold them off long enough for us to finish the job. If everything goes according to plan, we'll cripple their supply lines and force them to retreat." Lewis frowned but didn't argue further. He knew as well as anyone that desperate times called for desperate measures. Back in the crew quarters, Alex and Olivia sat together, going over their roles in the upcoming mission. Neither of them had signed up for this. They weren't trained soldiers after all. but they also knew they couldn't sit idly by while others risked their lives. "You sure about this?" Olivia asked, checking her sidearm for the third time. "You could always stay behind." Alex shook his head. "Not happening. I've seen what these bastards do firsthand. If I can help stop them, I will." Olivia smirked. "Good answer. Just remember, stick close to me out there. I'm not dragging your ass back if you screw up." "Deal," Alex said with a grin. They talked. A young officer approached them. His name was Ethan Cole, a fresh-faced private who looked barely old enough to shave. He carried a datapad filled with schematics of the depot. "Lieutenant Brooks," he said nervously, saluting. "Captain Carter wanted me to brief you on the layout of the target. Looks like you'll be leading Team 2. Olivia took the datapad and studied it carefully. "All right, kid, let's see what we're dealing with." Ethan pointed to various sections of the map. "This is the main storage facility. It's heavily guarded, but if we can plant the charges here," he tapped a spot near the center, "we should be able to take out the entire structure." Alex leaned in, examining the details. "What about escape routes? If things go sideways, we'll need a way out." "There's a service tunnel here," Ethan explained, highlighting a narrow passage. "It leads to a maintenance bay. From there we can rendezvous with the shuttles." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "Solid plan. Thanks, Private." As Ethan walked away, Alex turned to Olivia. "Think we can pull this off?" She gave him a wry smile. "Honestly, probably not. But hey, if we fail, at least we'll go out doing something that matters." Hours later, the Vanguard dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter, its cloaked shuttles slipping silently toward the Zorvath depot. Inside one of the crafts, Alex tightened his grip on his rifle, trying to steady his nerves. Beside him, Olivia checked her equipment one last time, her expression calm but focused. "We're approaching the drop zone," the pilot announced over the comms. "Good luck out there." The shuttle doors opened, revealing the vast expanse of space and the looming silhouette of the depot. Without hesitation, Olivia led the team outside, using magnetic boots to traverse the exterior hull. Behind her, Alex followed closely, his heart pounding in his chest. They reached the designated entry point and planted a breaching charge. A few tense seconds later, the hatch blew open, and they slipped inside. The depot was eerily quiet, its corridors dimly lit and lined with rows of supply crates. So far, so good. But as they moved deeper into the facility, alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the distance. "They know we're here," Olivia whispered, raising her weapon. "Move faster." Alex nodded, adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. Whether they succeeded or failed, humanity's fate rested in their hands, and somewhere deep within him, Alex found a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could win this fight after all. The alarms blared louder with each passing second, their shrill tones echoing through the metallic corridors of the Zorvath supply depot. Olivia moved quickly, her boots clicking softly against the floor as she led the team deeper into the facility. Behind her, Alex and Ethan followed closely, their weapons drawn and eyes scanning for any sign of enemy movement. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made every breath feel heavier than it should. "Stay sharp," Olivia whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "They'll be coming for us." Alex nodded, though his grip on his rifle tightened involuntarily. He had never been in a situation like this before, never faced real danger or made life-or-death decisions. Back on Mars, he'd spent most of his days fixing broken machinery and avoiding trouble. Now here he was, sneaking through an alien stronghold with nothing but a borrowed weapon and a prayer. It felt surreal, like stepping into one of the action vids he used to watch as a kid, except this wasn't a vid. If things went wrong, there would be no reset button. Ethan, meanwhile, looked pale but determined. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the strap of his pack, which contained the explosives they needed to plant. Despite his youth and inexperience, he hadn't complained once since joining the mission. In fact, he seemed almost eager to prove himself, a trait that both impressed and worried Olivia. "We're close," Olivia said, stopping at a junction. She consulted the datapad briefly before gesturing down the left corridor. This way. The central storage area is just ahead. The trio moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. So far, they hadn't encountered any resistance, but the lack of enemies only heightened their unease. Something didn't feel right. The Zorvath weren't careless. If anything, they were methodical and ruthless. There was no way they'd let intruders roam freely without setting some kind of trap. As they rounded a corner, their fears were confirmed. A group of Zorvath soldiers emerged from a side passage, their armored forms blocking the way forward. Each one carried a sleek plasma rifle, its barrel glowing ominously. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as both sides locked eyes. "Take cover!" Olivia shouted, diving behind a stack of crates. Alex and Ethan followed suit, barely avoiding the hail of plasma bolts that erupted moments later. The crates absorbed most of the impact, but shards of molten metal sprayed everywhere, forcing them to stay low. "This isn't good," Alex muttered, peeking around the edge of the crate. The Zorvath were advancing steadily, their movements precise and coordinated. "There's too many of them." Olivia gritted her teeth. "We don't have a choice. We take them out or we die trying." Before Alex could respond, Ethan leaned forward, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. "I've got an idea." "What is it?" Olivia asked, keeping her gaze fixed on the approaching enemies. "There's a ventilation shaft above us," Ethan explained, pointing to a narrow grate embedded in the ceiling. "If we can climb up there, we might be able to bypass them." Olivia hesitated. Using the vents was risky. They were cramped, poorly lit, and likely monitored, but staying put meant getting overrun. With a quick nod, she signaled for them to move. "On my mark," she said, pulling a smoke grenade from her belt. "When I throw this, go for the vent." Alex and Ethan positioned themselves beneath the grate, ready to act. On Olivia's signal, she hurled the grenade into the middle of the corridor. Thick clouds of smoke billowed outward, obscuring the Zorvath's vision. Taking advantage of the chaos, Alex boosted Ethan up to the vent, while Olivia provided covering fire. Once Ethan pried the grate open, Alex scrambled inside, followed by Olivia. The vent was even tighter than Alex had imagined. Every movement sent creaks reverberating through the narrow space, making him worry about attracting unwanted attention. Still, they pressed onward, crawling as quietly as possible toward the central storage area. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Vanguard, Captain Ryan Carter monitored the operation from the bridge. The mission was unfolding according to plan, for now, but the clock was ticking. The Zorvath reinforcements were en route, and once they arrived, all hell would break loose. "How much longer?" Ryan asked, turning to Commander Lewis. Lewis checked the status report streaming across his console. "Team 1 has disabled the outer defenses. Team 2 is nearing the objective. If everything goes smoothly, they should be done in 10 minutes. Ryan frowned. 10 minutes might as well have been 10 hours. Outnumbered and outgunned, holding off the Zorvath fleet would require more than skill. It would take sheer determination. And luck. Lots of it. "Keep me updated," Ryan ordered, his voice firm. "And prepare the fleet for extraction. I want everyone out of there the second the charges are set." "Aye, sir," Lewis replied, though his expression betrayed his doubts. This was a gamble, plain and simple. One misstep, and they'd lose not just the mission but the entire war effort. Back inside the depot, Alex, Olivia, and Ethan finally reached the central storage area. The room was massive, filled with towering shelves stacked high with supplies. Crates of ammunition, fuel cells, and spare parts lined the walls, creating a labyrinthine maze of resources. At the center stood a large control panel, its blinking lights indicating the heart of the depot's operations. "That's our target," Olivia said, pointing to the panel. "Plant the charges there. It'll take out the whole place." Ethan nodded and moved to work, carefully unpacking the explosives from his bag. Alex kept watch, his rifle trained on the entrances. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the occasional hum of machinery. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Almost done," Ethan called out after a few minutes. Sweat dripped down his face as he worked, his hands steady despite the pressure. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the chamber. Heavy boots clanked against the metal floor, growing louder with each step. Alex spun around, his finger hovering over the trigger. "We've got company." A squad of Zorvath soldiers burst into the room, their weapons raised. Before anyone could react, they opened fire, forcing the team to scatter for cover. Plasma bolts ricocheted off the shelves, sending sparks flying in all directions. "Finish the job, Ethan," Olivia shouted, returning fire. Her shots found their mark, taking down 2 of the soldiers, but more poured in to replace them. Alex ducked behind a crate, his mind racing. They were outnumbered and running out of options. Then, an idea struck him. Grabbing a nearby power conduit, he aimed his rifle and fired. The shot hit the conduit dead on, causing a chain reaction that sparked a small explosion. The resulting fire spread rapidly, engulfing several shelves and forcing the Zorvath to retreat. "Now," Olivia yelled, seizing the opportunity. Ethan hurriedly finished planting the last charge and activated the timer. "It's set. Let's go." The trio sprinted toward the exit, dodging debris and flames as the fire consumed the room. Behind them, the Zorvath regrouped, giving chase. Bullets whizzed past their heads as they ran, each step bringing them closer to safety and farther from certain death. Reaching the service tunnel, they paused briefly to catch their breath. The explosives would detonate in less than 2 minutes, collapsing the depot entirely. All they had to do now was make it back to the shuttles. "You did good, kid," Olivia said to Ethan, patting him on the shoulder. "Let's keep it up." But Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he stared at something behind them, his face pale with terror. Turning around, Olivia and Alex saw what had caught his attention. A lone Zorvath soldier standing in the doorway, its weapon trained directly on them. "Move," Olivia shouted, pushing Ethan toward the tunnel. As Alex and Ethan fled, she turned to face the enemy, firing wildly to buy them time. The Zorvath advanced, undeterred by her attacks. Finally, with a single decisive shot, it knocked her weapon from her hand. For a moment, everything stopped. Olivia stood defenseless, staring down the barrel of the alien's rifle. Then, without warning, Ethan appeared beside her, tackling the soldier with surprising ferocity. The two wrestled for control of the weapon, their struggle ending abruptly. When Ethan managed to wrest it free and fire a point-blank shot, the Zorvath collapsed motionless. Ethan stood trembling, the gun still clutched tightly in his hands. Olivia approached him slowly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You saved us," she said softly. "Come on, we need to go." Together, the 3 of them raced down the tunnel, emerging into the maintenance bay just as the first rumble of the explosion reached them. The ground shook violently, throwing them off balance. Looking back, they saw the depot collapse in a fiery inferno, its destruction lighting up the darkness of space. "We did it," Alex breathed, leaning against the wall for support. His legs felt like jelly, but a smile spread across his face. Against all odds, they had succeeded. Olivia nodded, her expression grim but satisfied. "Yeah, we did. Now let's get the hell out of here." As the team boarded the waiting shuttle, the reality of their victory began to sink in. They had accomplished what many thought impossible, striking a blow against the Zorvath that would ripple across the galaxy. But the cost weighed heavily on their minds. Lives had been lost, sacrifices made. And though the battle was won, the war was far from over. Still, as the shuttle sped away from the wreckage, Alex allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had taken its first real step toward survival. The shuttle carrying Alex, Olivia, and Ethan streaked through the void of space, its engines glowing faintly against the backdrop of stars. Inside, the 3 survivors sat in silence, their bodies battered but alive. The mission had been a success. The Zorvath supply depot was gone, reduced to a floating graveyard of twisted metal and ash. But none of them felt like celebrating. Not yet. Alex leaned back in his seat, trying to steady his breathing. His hands still trembled from adrenaline, and his mind replayed every moment of the escape. He glanced at Ethan, who stared blankly out the window, his face pale and drawn. The young private had saved their lives back there, taking down a Zorvath soldier with a courage that surprised even himself. But now, the weight of what he'd done seemed to press down on him. "You okay?" Alex asked quietly, leaning closer. Ethan blinked as if waking from a dream. "Yeah, I think so," he replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "It's just, I've never killed anyone before." Olivia turned her head slightly, her sharp eyes softening for a moment. "You did what you had to do," she said firmly. "If you hadn't acted, we'd all be dead. Remember that." Ethan nodded slowly, but the haunted look in his eyes didn't fade. Alex wanted to say something more, to offer some kind of reassurance, but words failed him. Instead, he patted Ethan on the shoulder and let the silence linger. Back aboard the USS Vanguard, Captain Ryan Carter watched as the cloaked shuttles returned one by one, each carrying exhausted but triumphant teams. The mission had succeeded beyond expectations. The Zorvath supply lines were crippled, and the enemy fleet was already showing signs of disarray. For the first time in months, there was a glimmer of hope on the bridge. "Status report," Ryan barked, turning to Commander Lewis. "All teams accounted for, sir," Lewis replied, checking his console. "Casualties were higher than anticipated, but we achieved our objective. The depot is destroyed." Ryan nodded grimly. Every life lost weighed heavily on him, but sacrifices had been necessary. The real test would come soon. The Kalari delegation was scheduled to arrive within hours. If humanity couldn't convince them to join the fight, this victory might mean nothing in the long run. "Prepare the fleet for withdrawal," Ryan ordered, "and send word to Admiral Monroe. She'll want to hear about this." "Aye, sir," Lewis responded, relaying the commands to the crew. As the Vanguard began its retreat, Ryan allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. This operation had proven something important, not just to the Kalari, but to humanity itself. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they had shown resilience, ingenuity, and sheer determination. It wasn't just about winning battles anymore. It was about proving that humans deserved a place among the stars. Admiral Catherine Monroe stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital command station, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Below her, the blue-green orb of Earth spun silently, oblivious to the chaos raging above it. News of the successful sabotage mission had reached her moments ago, and while she felt a surge of pride, she knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The Kalari were unpredictable allies at best, and convincing them to commit fully to the war effort would require more than just tactical victories. A soft chime signaled an incoming transmission. Turning, Kate activated the holoscreen, revealing the scaled visage of Commander Vraxtool, leader of the Kalari delegation. His golden eyes gleamed with curiosity, or perhaps suspicion, as he regarded her. "Admiral Monroe," Vraxtool hissed, his voice low and guttural. "Your species has performed admirably. Destroying the depot was no small feat." Kate inclined her head respectfully. "Thank you, Commander. We understand the risks involved and are prepared to do whatever it takes to secure the galaxy's future." Vraxtool tilted his head slightly, considering her words. "Impressive rhetoric, Admiral, but actions speak louder than words. Tell me, what will humanity offer if we choose to ally ourselves with you?" Kate hesitated. This was the moment of truth. The Kalari valued strength and efficiency above all else, and any sign of weakness would doom the negotiations. Drawing a deep breath, she met Vraxtool's gaze squarely. "We offer our resolve," she said steadily. "Our ability to adapt, to innovate, and to fight when others would surrender. We may lack your technology or experience, but we have something far rarer, a willingness to sacrifice everything for survival." For a long moment, Vraxtool said nothing. Then a flicker of what might have been respect passed across his features. "Very well, Admiral. You have earned our consideration. But know this, if you fail again, the Kalari will not intervene. Humanity must prove itself capable of standing alongside us, not hiding behind us." Kate nodded sharply. "Understood, Commander. You won't regret this decision." As the transmission ended, Kate exhaled slowly, allowing herself a small smile. It wasn't a full commitment, but it was enough, for now. The Kailari would provide limited support, sharing intelligence and resources while observing humanity's progress. It was a fragile alliance, but it was a start. Meanwhile, aboard the Vanguard, Alex, Olivia, and Ethan were debriefed by Captain Carter himself. Their bravery during the mission had earned them recognition, though neither Alex nor Ethan sought praise. They simply wanted to rest, to process everything that had happened. "You three did good work out there," Ryan said, his tone warm but serious. "This victory wouldn't have been possible without you." "Thank you, sir," Olivia replied, standing at attention. Beside her, Alex shifted uncomfortably, unused to such formalities. Ryan studied them for a moment before continuing. "But the war isn't over yet. In fact, it's only just beginning. The Kailari are willing to help, but they're watching us closely. We need to keep pushing forward, keep proving that humanity is worth fighting for." Alex frowned. "What happens next?" Ryan's expression hardened. "We hit them where it hurts. The Zorvath aren't just attacking blindly. They're following orders from someone higher up, someone pulling the strings. We need to find out who that is and cut off the source." "Their leaders?" Olivia guessed. "Maybe," Ryan admitted. "Or maybe something else entirely. Either way, we can't stop until we've dismantled their entire operation. That means more missions like this one, riskier, harder, and more dangerous than anything we've faced so far." Ethan swallowed, nervously. "And if we don't succeed?" Ryan placed a firm hand on the private's shoulder. "Then we die trying. Because if we don't fight, no one else will." Later that evening, Alex found himself wandering the Vanguard's corridors, unable to sleep. The events of the past few days replayed endlessly in his mind, refusing to let him rest. He eventually made his way to the observation lounge where Olivia sat alone, staring out at the stars. "Mind if I join you?" Alex asked cautiously. Olivia glanced up and shrugged. "Suit yourself." He took a seat beside her, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. "Do you ever wonder why we're doing this?" he asked after a while. "I mean, we're just people, normal people. Why does it always fall to us to save the day?" Olivia smirked faintly. "Because normal people are the ones who actually care. The big shots, the leaders, they sit back and make plans. But it's folks like us who get things done. We see problems and we fix them. Simple as that." Alex chuckled softly. "Simple, huh? Feels pretty complicated to me." "Maybe," Olivia conceded. "But that's the thing about desperate times. They force you to rise to the occasion, whether you're ready or not. And right now, humanity needs every ounce of courage it can get." Alex nodded thoughtfully. For the first time since joining the fight, he felt a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going no matter how hard things got. Maybe they weren't soldiers or heroes, but they were human. And sometimes, that was enough. As the Vanguard continued its journey, preparations began for the next phase of the war. Intelligence reports suggested that the Zorvath were regrouping near Saturn, fortifying their positions in anticipation of another attack. The Alliance fleet was stretched thin, its resources dwindling, but morale remained high. Word of the depot's destruction had spread quickly, inspiring both soldiers and civilians alike. On Earth, General Samuel Hayes worked tirelessly to rally support, reminding everyone that even the smallest contributions could make a difference. Factories churned out weapons and supplies around the clock, while volunteers signed up in droves to join the fight. Humanity was uniting in ways no one had thought possible, driven by a shared desire to survive and to win. Little by little, the tide was turning. Desperate times had called for humans, and humanity had answered the call. But the road ahead was long, fraught with challenges that would test their resolve to the breaking point. Yet despite the odds, hope burned brightly in their hearts. The war wasn't over yet. But for the first time, it felt like victory might actually be within reach. The galaxy was changing. Slowly but surely, humanity's role in the war was shifting from that of a victim to a contender. The destruction of the Zorvath supply depot had sent shockwaves through both sides of the conflict. For the first time, the enemy seemed uncertain, their movements cautious and deliberate. It was as if they were beginning to realize that humans were no longer easy prey. Aboard the USS Vanguard, preparations for the next mission were underway. Captain Ryan Carter paced the bridge, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. Intelligence reports indicated that the Zorvath were amassing near Saturn's rings, using its natural cover to shield their forces. Breaking through their defenses would be difficult, but not impossible. Humanity had proven itself capable of overcoming far greater odds before. "Sir," Commander Lewis interrupted, holding up a datapad. "We've received updated intel on the Zorvath fleet. Their numbers are larger than anticipated." Ryan stopped pacing and took the datapad, scanning the information quickly. His jaw tightened. The Zorvath weren't just regrouping, they were preparing for a massive counterattack. If the Alliance didn't act soon, the enemy could regain the upper hand. "Double the patrols around Jupiter," Ryan ordered. "And get me Lieutenant Brooks and Rivera in here immediately. We need fresh eyes on this." Moments later, Alex and Olivia entered the bridge, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. They had barely recovered from the last mission, and neither of them relished the idea of diving back into danger so soon. Still, they knew better than to refuse an order. "You called for us, Captain?" Olivia asked, her tone professional despite the fatigue evident in her stance. Ryan nodded. "We've got a problem. The Zorvath are fortifying their position near Saturn, and we can't afford to let them dig in any deeper. I need you two to lead another strike team, this time targeting their communications hub." Alex frowned. "Their communications hub? Why not hit their ships directly?" "Because disabling their ability to coordinate will cripple their entire operation," Ryan explained. "Without clear lines of communication, their fleet becomes vulnerable. Once we take out the hub, the rest of the fleet can move in and finish the job." Olivia crossed her arms. "Sounds risky. What's the catch?" "The catch," Ryan said grimly, "is that the hub is located inside one of their largest carriers. Heavily guarded, heavily fortified, and nearly impossible to infiltrate without being detected." Alex raised an eyebrow. "So basically you're asking us to walk into a death trap." "Infiltration isn't your only option," Ryan replied. "There's a maintenance tunnel running beneath the carrier. If you can access it, you might be able to plant explosives close enough to destroy the hub without ever stepping foot inside the ship." "And if something goes wrong?" Olivia pressed. "Then you improvise," Ryan said simply. "I won't lie to you, this mission is dangerous, but it's our best shot at turning the tide. Are you in?" Alex glanced at Olivia, who gave him a resigned shrug. "Guess we don't have much of a choice, do we?" Meanwhile, aboard the orbital command station, Admiral Catherine Monroe met with General Samuel Hayes to discuss the broader strategy. The success of the sabotage mission had boosted morale across the fleet, but the war was far from over. Every victory came at a cost, and resources were dwindling rapidly. "We can't keep throwing people at this problem," Hayes said, rubbing his temples. "We need a sustainable plan, one that doesn't rely solely on brute force." Monroe nodded. "Agreed. Which is why I've been working with the Kalari on developing new tactics. Their technology is years ahead of ours, and they've agreed to share some of their advancements for now." Hayes leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of advancements?" "Stealth tech, primarily," Monroe replied. "If we can equip our ships with cloaking devices similar to theirs, we'll have a significant advantage. The Zorvath won't know where or when we'll strike." "That's assuming we can replicate their systems," Hayes pointed out. "The Kalari aren't exactly known for making things easy." "True," Monroe admitted, "but we don't have a choice. Desperation breeds innovation, General. If we want to survive, we need to think outside the box." As the two leaders continued their discussion, news arrived from Earth. Civilians were rallying in unprecedented numbers. Factories once dedicated to consumer goods were now producing weapons and armor. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, eager to join the fight. Even children were contributing, organizing supply drives and raising funds for the war effort. It was a remarkable display of unity, one that reminded Monroe why she had chosen to serve in the first place. Humanity wasn't perfect. It was messy, flawed and often divided, but when faced with extinction, it came together in ways no other species could match. Back aboard the Vanguard, Alex and Olivia prepared for their latest mission. Ethan had been reassigned to a different team, leaving the two of them to work alone. Though Alex missed the young private's quiet determination, he understood the necessity of splitting up experienced personnel. Every hand was needed elsewhere. "This feels familiar," Alex muttered as he checked his gear. "Running into danger with nothing but a plan and a prayer." Olivia smirked. "Yeah, well, at least we've got each other this time. Try not to slow me down, okay?" "Wouldn't dream of it," Alex shot back, grinning despite himself. The shuttle carrying them to the target zone launched quietly, its engines muffled by advanced stealth technology provided by the Kaelari. As they approached Saturn, the vastness of the Zorvath fleet became apparent. Dozens of ships orbited the gas giant, their hulls glinting ominously under the planet's dim light. At the center of the formation loomed the carrier, a behemoth, of metal and weaponry surrounded by smaller escorts. "Here we go," Olivia whispered as the shuttle descended toward the maintenance tunnel. "Stay sharp." Once inside the tunnel, Alex and Olivia moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing softly against the walls. The passage was narrow and poorly lit, forcing them to navigate by touch and instinct. Every sound made them flinch. Every shadow seemed alive with potential threats. "How much farther?" Alex asked after what felt like hours of crawling through the cramped space. "Not far," Olivia replied, consulting the map on her wrist console. "The hub should be just ahead." They reached a junction where the tunnel branched off in multiple directions. Olivia hesitated, studying the layout carefully. "This way," she said finally, pointing to the left path. "It leads straight to the core." As they rounded the corner, a low hum filled the air, the unmistakable sound of machinery. Moments later, they emerged into a small chamber housing the communication hub's power supply. Massive conduits snaked along the walls, feeding energy into the central node. "This is it," Olivia said, pulling a set of charges from her pack. "Start planting these while I keep watch." Alex nodded and got to work, attaching the explosives to key points around the room. His hands moved quickly, guided by muscle memory rather than conscious thought. Despite the tension, he found a strange sense of focus in the task. This was what he did best: fixing problems, finding solutions. "Almost done," he announced, after a few minutes. Sweat dripped down his face, but his voice remained steady. Suddenly, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the tunnel. Olivia spun around, her weapon raised. "We've got company." A squad of Zorvath soldiers appeared at the entrance, their weapons trained on the intruders. Before either side could react, Olivia fired a quick burst, taking down two of the soldiers. Alex grabbed a nearby conduit and aimed his rifle, firing blindly in an attempt to buy them time. "Finish the job," Olivia shouted, ducking behind cover. Alex scrambled back to the charges, activating the final one just as the timer began ticking down. "It's set. Let's go." Together, they sprinted toward the exit, dodging plasma bolts and collapsing debris as the explosives detonated behind them. The explosion sent a shockwave rippling through the tunnel, knocking them off their feet. Smoke and sparks filled the air, obscuring their vision. "Move," Olivia yelled, pulling Alex to his feet. They stumbled out of the tunnel and into the waiting shuttle, which lifted off seconds before the carrier erupted in flames. From a safe distance, they watched as the massive ship broke apart, its wreckage scattering across Saturn's rings. Back aboard the Vanguard, cheers erupted on the bridge as news of the successful mission spread. The Zorvath fleet was thrown into disarray, their coordination shattered without the hub to guide them. For the first time in months, humanity held the advantage. Captain Ryan Carter approached Alex and Olivia as they disembarked from the shuttle. "Good work," he said, extending a hand. "You've earned yourselves a break." Alex shook his head, smiling faintly. "Honestly, sir, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep doing this." "You'd be surprised," Ryan replied. "Humans are resilient. When push comes to shove, we find a way to keep going. Just look at yourself. You started as a mechanic and now you're saving the galaxy," Olivia chuckled. "Don't let it go to his head, Captain. He's still got a lot to learn. Ryan laughed. Fair enough. But for now, rest up. We'll need you both ready for whatever comes next. As Alex and Olivia walked away, the weight of everything they'd accomplished, and everything still ahead, settled over them. The war was far from over, but for the first time, they allowed themselves to believe that victory might actually be possible.